Good morning. Welcome to the Three Counties Church Daily Meditations. My name's David Wright. I'm one of the leaders here at Three Counties Church, and I'm just going to try something new this morning. I have a question for you to answer, and hopefully it has come up on your screen. How many Psalms have we covered in our Three Counties Church Daily Meditations so far? If you're watching in a mobile, you might need to tap the purple graph icon on your device for the poll to show up. But I'm going to give you a few minutes just to vote on that. And in the meantime, let me just welcome you to our morning meditations. Thanks so much for joining. If you're a regular, thank you for tuning in. If you're joining for the first time, don't worry about the question. We'll get to our meditation in a minute. So just back to the question, how many Psalms have we covered on our meditations so far? Is it 24? Is it 29? Is it 33? Or is it 39? So have a go at answering. Feel free to comment as well. Pop in your comments, and then we will come back maybe at the end of the meditation to this poll and see what the results are. So today we are focusing on Psalm 131. Psalm 131. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me, but I have calmed and quietened myself like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child, I am content. Israel, put your hope in the Lord, both now and forevermore. So I'd like us to meditate on all four things in this psalm. And all I would suggest are postures of the heart. So the first thing is this: it's a posture of humility. The psalmist has chosen the way of humility. My heart is not proud, Lord. My eyes are not haughty. The Psalms are full of these couplets, aren't they? Two lines saying the same thing, but with slightly different words or emphases. And I find it interesting the body parts David uses in these two lines. The heart, the seat of our emotions, the centre of our being. David has postured his heart towards humility, to let God be God. And the eyes, the seat of our ambition, our identity, perhaps all, how we view ourselves. And David hasn't let his ambition run away with itself. He hasn't let his identity be caught up in other things. His eyes are not haughty. So shall we just take a moment to humble ourselves before God, to check our hearts for pride, to test our eyes for haughtiness? He is God and we are not. So let's just posture ourselves with humility before God for a moment. So the psalmist has chosen the way of humility, but he has also recognized his limits. David says, I do not concern myself with great matters or things too wonderful for me. So I don't think this means that David didn't care, or that he wasn't interested in the world, in science, in how things worked. Certainly Solomon was very wise in that area. But I suspect he is talking about the difficult things that's happened in his life. David had a tough life, and he could have asked many times, why, Lord? And in fact, he did ask. He could have wasted hours, days, years trying to figure this out. But instead, he recognized his limits. There are some things we may never fully understand this side of eternity. Why has God allowed the coronavirus? Why has this person died? Why have I lost my job? Why am I or someone I love suffering? And it's not just the coronavirus situation. We can ask those questions whenever difficult things come into our lives. And God is okay with us asking these questions. You look through the Psalms, many of the Psalms we've read so far, those questions come up. But David doesn't spend lots of time wallowing in those questions. These might be great matters that we just don't need to figure out, that we just need to give back to God the question asked, but as yet unanswered. So what things do you need to give back to God this morning? Why don't you present these before him now? Let's take a moment to do that. And the third thing I'd like to highlight is this: a choice to be content. The Revised Standard Version puts it like this: I've calmed and quieted my soul, like a child quieted at its mother's breast, like a child that is quieted is my soul. And my image here is that of my boys when they were babies. I was feeding them a bottle, and their eyes were like full empty indicators. So I'd start off the feed and their eyes would be wide open. They'd be feeding away. About halfway through, I'd notice just the eyelids begin to droop a little bit. That full empty indicator sort of going towards full. And a little later, as they filled up completely, their eyelids would just close and then shut, and they would stop feeding and just fall fast asleep, perfectly quieted, perfectly contented, and well fed. Notice too the actor in this section. I have calmed and quieted my soul. David is choosing to do this. He's actively taking steps to calm and quieten his soul. I wonder how he did it. Did he slow down? Did he take some time out? Did he sit down somewhere? Perhaps did he focus on his breathing? Did he look around at nature? Some of the other Psalms talk about, I lift my eyes up to the mountains. Did he look at God's wonderful creation around him? How did he calm and quieten his soul? And how do we, in our context, in 21st century? At my work, well-being is a big priority, particularly in these times. And it's one of the areas I look after for my team. And people talk about mindfulness, they talk about the rhythms of life. And it's great to know that the Bible speaks to these things. Over 3,000 years ago, David was practicing good mental health. He was talking to himself about calming and quietening his soul. And let's just take a moment or two to do that. If you're watching this live or if it's the beginning of a day, it's a great time to calm and quieten your soul, perhaps with that image of the well-fed baby, fallen asleep, safe in its mother's arms. And so the final item to highlight is this, a hope in the Lord. David says, O Israel, hope in the Lord. He is talking to himself as well as to others. It's an encouragement, it's an exhortation to hope in God. And it reminds me a bit of when I was a youth worker with Youth for Christ many years ago. My boss was called Brandy. His real name was Andrew Brannigan, but everybody called him Brandy. And he was speaking at a youth event and wanted to illustrate trust, that active hope. And he had a few of us up to practice with him. He got up on a table. He got us in pairs behind the table, and we linked hands in pairs. And he turned round and fell backwards into our arms. And that was him demonstrating trust. And then in the middle of the talk, he built this up. There was about 400 young people in the room. And at the appropriate moment, he called us up because he was going to demonstrate trust. And he got us to line up in pairs and told the young people what he was going to do. He was going to show he trusted us and fall back into our arms. And then he said to us, link hands. And we stood with our arms to our sides. And he said again, come on, guys, link hands. Let's do this. And we still stood with our hands by our side. And I still remember him just turning around and saying, guys, this is going to be real trust. Okay, I'm going to do it. And then he just began to fall back. And true enough, we quickly linked hands and caught him. Trust can be scary. Putting our hope in the Lord can be a challenge. Perhaps that's why David has to remind himself to put his hope in the Lord. That's why he has to remind all of Israel to hope in the Lord. And not just for today, that's important, but forevermore. We need to continually come back to placing our hope in the Lord. So let's remind ourselves of that, particularly at this time of crisis and challenge, to hope in the Lord. And let's encourage those around us to do the same as well. Let's think on that for a moment, and then I'll pray. Lord God, today we want to take a posture of humility. We want to recognize that you are God. We want to recognize our limits. We want to choose to be content in our situation, content in your arms, content with your provision. And we want to place our hope in you. So help us, Lord, and help us to encourage others to hope in you as well. Amen. So thank you for joining. Let me see if I can show this poll results. So that should pop up on your screen. We had 67% going for 29 Psalms, and that's including today. And we had 17% on 33 and 39. And the answer is, it's 29. So we've had 33 sessions so far. We've been running these meditations actually since the 23rd of March. So for 39 days, but we haven't had meditations on Sundays or Good Fridays, and actually we've spent a number of meditations on the same Psalms. We've done a couple of Psalms in parts. So thank you for joining, thank you for responding, and have a wonderful day. God bless.